So, shall we start? Huh? Okay. Kusampu and good morning, everyone. In this segment of the program, I am going to present on the topic corruption prevention tools in general, and specifically, I will narrow it down to a few selected corruption prevention tools. So, just to reiterate my earlier presenter, the ACC has been mandated to prevent and combat corruption by the Constitution of the Kingdom of Bhutan. And in furthering this mandate, the ACC has adopted the three-pronged strategies. And one of these strategies is the prevention of the corruption through mainstreaming integrity and anti-corruption measures in the governance or the internal governance system of every agencies across the country, essentially. So, before I proceed with my presentation, just to give you the presentation outline, my presentation will briefly cover, firstly, on the overarching strategy or the approaches for corruption prevention and combating corruption in the country. Then I will highlight on the organizational integrity plan that has been adopted and implemented by the agencies from the public, private, and CSO sectors. And then I will also briefly present on the corruption prevention tools. As I said earlier, there are so many tools, numerous tools, but I will focus on few selected tools. And if there is any questions, doubts, or even suggestions or feedbacks, we will discuss it towards the end of my presentation during the question and answer session. Okay, now to start with my presentation. As we all know that corruption is very dynamic and complex in phenomenon affecting every country in the world, be it developed or developing countries. It undermines the democratic principles. It widens the gaps between the rich and poor. So therefore, it has been also recently recognized as one of the greatest challenges in the socio-economic development. So considering all this, considering the complexity of the corruption, so there is no one-size-fits-all approach to prevent and combat corruption. In fact, it requires concerted and collective efforts from different stakeholders to prevent and combat corruption essentially. And in this light, the Anti-Corruption Act of Bhutan 2011 has mandated, as per the section 24(1)(a), has mandated the Commission to develop, maintain, revise, and monitor the implementation of effective, coordinated anti-corruption policies and practices in the agencies, in public and private agencies across the country. The ambit of the Act is not only confined to the Commission, it also extends, as per the Chapter 3, Section 36(1), it empowers the head of public agency, head of public agencies to, again, develop, maintain, and implement anti-corruption measures in their individual agencies, whether or not as a result of investigations. So therefore, firstly, it is mandate of the Commission to develop and come up with a policy and strategy to prevent and combat corruption. But on top of that, the Act also empowers the public institutions, public agencies to come up with their own initiatives and measures to prevent and fight corruption institutions. Now, in this line, to foster strong alliance against corruption, and also to provide the comprehensive and collective, holistic corruption prevention measures, integrity measures, also to bring the key stakeholders together in fighting corruption, the ACC, the Commission, has developed an overarching strategy called the National Integrity and Anti-Corruption Strategies. In short, we call it as NIACS. For 2019 to 2023, 5 years key strategy that is it is a third of its kind and developed under the consultative process, rigorous consultative process with the key stakeholders, and it is also well aligned to the 12 5-year plan's key documents because in the 12 5-year plan, as you all know that there are 17 national key result areas identified to be achieved in the 5-year plan. And one of the NKRA, National Key Result Area, that is the top one, is corruption reduced. And for achieving that or realizing that corruption reduced, so the Commission has developed this strategy as an operative framework to facilitate agencies to achieve or realize or work towards achieving the corruption reduced goal, and also to foster strong alliance and collective responsibilities in fighting corruption in society. And in this strategy, there are 3 strategic objectives identified. So, namely, the first objective is transparent, accountable, and integrity culture strengthened. So, through implementation of this strategy, we want to strengthen the transparency, accountability, and integrity culture in the agencies. Then, second one is integrity consciousness enhanced. So, as my earlier presenter said, that informed and awakened citizen movement on the integrity and ethics. Then third objective is the credibility and effectiveness of law enforcement and regulatory agencies enhanced. So these are the 3 strategic objectives that were identified or adopted in this strategy. And there are total 9 outputs under these 3 strategic objectives to be fulfilled or to be worked on in order to realize our strategic objectives. So if we could, by the end of the implementation period, achieve all these 3 strategic objectives. Now, from these 3 strategic objectives, strategic objective 1 and 2 is basically applies to all the agencies, be it public institutions, private CSOs, or corporations, whatever. So we need concerted effort, again, collective coordinations within these agencies to fulfill the strategy number 1, objective number 1 and 2. Whereas strategic objective number 3 is specifically focused to the law enforcement agencies and regulatory agencies essentially. So if we could achieve all these 3 strategic objectives, then we are building citizens, or we are developing the accountable, moral, transparent systems and individual, or TAMSI, for the happy, harmonious, and corruption-free society in essentially. So that is how we actually aligned our strategy towards achieving happy, harmonious, and corruption-free society towards the end in a long run. Plus now our mainstreaming efforts or framework. So as I said earlier, prevention is all to do with strengthening the system, strengthening the internal control mechanisms in the agencies. And in doing that, what is our effort in strengthening the internal control system or strengthening the integrity in the agencies is through the mainstreaming the integrity and anti-corruption measures in the day-to-day governance systems of your agency. So as I said, at the top, we have an overall goal, and that goal is called corruption reduced. So whatever we do, whatever your agency try to implement integrity and anti-corruption measure, it is all towards reducing corruption at our national level. And now, in order to realize this goal, we have to implement the strategy that I said earlier, the National Integrity and Anti-Corruption Strategy. there are three strategic objectives. We must work towards achieving that three strategic objectives so that we can realize our goal, that is corruption reduction. And in order to achieve our strategic objectives, in order to work towards the strategic objectives, so we are making our efforts, we are collaborating with the agencies to mainstream these mandatory indicators. Every agencies have to implement the integrity and anti-corruption measures in their internal governance system, which is integrated into their annual work plans. That is our approach in institution. So annual work plans like APA, annual performance agreements, like ministry, they call it as APA. Then other autonomous agencies, constitutional offices, they do it as APT, annual performance targets. Then in corporate world, they call it a strategic plan, then annual performance compact. So we are actually pushing to the agencies to integrate these mandatory indicators on integrity and anti-corruption in these key plans, key organizational plans, so that we receive greater ownership and commitment from the agency. Now, once it is integrated in your plans, then what we have to do to accomplish our target is through the implementation of organizational integrity plan in session. And these are the means of verifications or for the assessment purpose in session. So the basic or the fundamental to achieve our overall goal, corruption reduce, is through the implementation of organizational integrity plan. So now, what is an OIP? What is organizational integrity plan? By definition, it is defined as a time-bound action plan which is aimed or targeted towards strengthening the integrity and anti-corruption measures or principles in the agencies in your internal governance system. And what constitute OIP? What are the indicators? What are the activities under OIP means? OIP includes the mandatory activities or the indicators that are determined by the relevant authorities. As of now, the ACC, we determine the mandatory activities every year. Every year we select activities and assign to the agencies to implement, and we do assessment. And besides that, in addition to that, we also expect agencies to implement the recommendations. Any recommendations that emanates from national integrity assessments conducted or the corruption risk management or systemic studies conducted in your agencies. If you have received any sort of recommendations, these recommendations has to be implemented as a part of OIP activity implemented also. And then, since the nature and the context of organizations are different in different sectors, so therefore we also expect we keep this OIP open so that the agencies they can initiate proactively some integrity and anti-corruption measures to strengthen the transparency, accountability, or integrity in your organization. So you can also, we have also provision in the OIP whereby you can initiate your own activities or the measures to strengthen transparency, accountability, and integrity culture. So these are the activities that comes under the OIP, that comprises OIP. So as I said earlier, we expect this OIP to be integrated or mainstreamed into your key organizational plans. So for the BPC, I think it's compact, right? So compact number 2 better. So I never implement because to get ownership and sustainability. And assessments will be done annually by the ACC. So for the financial year 2020 to 2021, as of now, we are following this financial cycle, the follow the dollar. But with time, I think we also have to relook into that because there are some agencies who follows the calendar year, like corporations. So they all follow calendar years. So we also have to relook into the implementation and the evaluation cycle once we are fully now. once we becomes more and more into implementing these OIP activities. So in the last financial year, we have given around 6 activities to the agencies to implement. And these are the 6 activities. The first one is enforce administrative sanctions vis-a-vis the complaints that you have received. Then second one is strengthen declaration and management of the assets. Then third one is strengthen declaration and management of conflict of interest, gift, code of conduct, grievance redress mechanisms. And fourth is role of integrity focal persons has to be strengthened. Then fifth is the internal control frameworks. National internal control frameworks has to be implemented. And then sixth, as I said, is open. You can have additional activities or initiatives or measures to again strengthen this transparency, accountability in your organization. So these were the 6 activities that we have assigned for the last financial year. And for the current financial year, most of these activities remains as it is, but there were slight changes in activity number 4. So activity number 4 is now you have to implement integrity vetting system, background checking while you do recruitment or promotion. So as of now, we are just looking for recruitment and promotion. You must do the integrity vetting, check background checking. Then fifth one is you should conduct ethical leadership trainings. So we are planning, we are working on the platform to avail for this ethical leadership trainings, and not only relying on to the ACC, but if your agency could also hire some resource person and conduct your own ethical leadership training, that would be again accepted. So these are the 6 activities that we have assigned to the agencies for this financial year and will be assessed towards the end of the financial year. And the details of these activities, criteria, means of verifications will be provided to your focal person, which is planned towards the end of this month. We have a session with the focal person. So coming to the evaluation, we do the evaluation every year, and for financial year 2020 to 2021, we have evaluated around 131 agencies from public, private, and CSO sectors, and we have generally categorized these agencies as of now into 3: APA agencies, APT agencies, and OIP agencies. So APA, those agencies who signs agreement with the Prime Minister, and APT are those agencies which are funded by GNSC but not signs with the Prime Minister. And the agencies who neither falls into APA or APT are grouped into OIP. So coming to the assessment, so there are around 45 APA signatories, which comprises of 10 ministries, 20 Zongkoks, 4 Tromdes, and of the 36 agencies, autonomous agencies, 11 are APA agencies. Then remaining autonomous agencies, 5 constitutional officers, then 3 armed forces are grouped into APT. So total there are 33 APT agencies. Then 53 agencies from corporations, media, and CSOs are under the OIP category. So total we have evaluated or reviewed the implementation of OIP in 131 agencies for the financial year 2020-2021. So coming to the findings of the OIP implementations now, the overall findings shows that of 131 agencies who are currently implementing OIP, around 40% of the agencies have achieved their target in the excellent category. And then followed by 11% in a very good, 14% in good, 8% in fair, and 27% in poor. We also have equally significant figure in the poor category because we have currently brought CSOs, the corporations on board, and they have recently picked up in implementing this OIP. That's why the performance of the implementation in these sectors are not that good as of now, but we are looking forward to improve in the coming years. So if we look at the category-wise Petawati, The blue one is AP agencies, and orange is APT, and the gray one is the OIP. So, you see the number of OIP agencies in the poor category is quite high than the rest of the category. Now, specifically, if I share the result of the PPC, PPC implementation of OIP targeting. So, of the 6 activities that we have assessed, most 5 activities have performed in a very good or outstanding level of the reduction. Whereas activity number 6, which is additional or proactive initiatives from the agency's side, there were no documents submitted on that, so we could not give the score for this activity. So as of our assessment, as per the assessment, the performance on the initiatives from the agency's side in strengthening the integrity and anti-corruption measure is quite poor. So the overall implementation is 70%, which is in excellent category, as per the target that we have set for the last financial year. So every year, again, we are increasing the target. Target is to achieve increased reduction. Plus, now next one is the prevention tools. I will briefly present on prevention tools. So there are several prevention tools that were developed and institutionalized in the agencies. And today I will focus on 4 important tools, that is asset declaration and management, gift declaration and management, conflict of interest declaration and management, and then lastly I will present briefly on the code of conduct. So to start with the asset declaration and management. Asset declaration is an accountability tool which is implemented or institutionalized to ensure transparency and accountability in managing public resources by its custodians. So custodians here refers to the public servants. So why we have to declare or file asset declaration is to ensure transparency and accountability in managing the public resources. So who have to file the asset declaration is all the public servants that are covered under the Asset Declaration Rule 2017, and their spouses or the dependents must file the asset declaration. So if there is any assets in the public servant's name, as well as if there are any assets in the spouse or dependent's name, if the spouse and dependents are not separately covered by the rule, then you have to file it along with the public servant's deliverable. Now, what we have to file or what we have to declare during asset declaration is we have to file or declare the assets, all the assets that you have in your name or in your spouse or dependent's name, such as land, house or buildings, cars or vehicles, then bank deposits, bank balance. Then we also must declare the convertible assets. If the assets are any high value, then you have to also declare that convertible assets. Then shares and stocks that are in your name. So all these assets have to be filed during your asset declaration time. But it's one-time declaration either. So when you assume the office and you declare for the first time, you have to declare everything what you have in your name. So after that, if there is only additional asset that you have acquired, then that is recorded. Otherwise, you don't have to repeat and declare everything every year. So along with the asset, you also have to file your income and expenditure for that particular year. 1 year no income karim chideva mola, then expenditure karim chideva, and so ngachigi declare bebola. Expenditures level not ngachi daily and subsistence expenditure to member. So if you have purchased like laptops and mola, the Apple MacBooks are quite expensive. Then in addition, there are if you have traveled for holiday or vacations to somewhere, so that expenditures you have to file. Not that you have daily substance is declared payment. Then yes, mobile phone also. Because, as per the rule, it says if anything that worth more than your 1 month's basic pay, you have to file it as a actually any expenditure notified. Then you also have to file your liabilities, like loan distribution. That also you have to declare. And then if there is any additional job or post-employment plans, this that also have to be declared. Basically, to check much a conflict of interest management can be essentially. Now, when we have to file asset declaration, is annually the declaration time is 1st February to 31st March. But if you are declaring for the first time as an assumption of office, the job number first time rule give a cover as a watching, then you have to declare for the first time, and that declaration is called assumption of office. It must be filed within 3 months after assuming the office in assumption of office position. Then vacation of office, we have another category of filing asset declaration when you exit the job, superannuation resignation. So that has to be filed in 1 month time before and after you exit. If your exit is planned, then you have to file vacation of office before you exit from the current position. If it is unplanned or ad hoc position, then after 1 month of your exit. So that is how we file the vacation of office. Now penalty for the breaches. So if there is non-compliance to the asset declaration rules or the requirement by the provisions of the asset declaration rules, then there are also certain penalties for that. First one is late declarants. We categorize certain declarants as late declarants if the declaration was done in the month of May. May month then actually late declarants. So if your filing of asset was done in May 1 or May 30, it is late declarant. But the penalty will vary. So penalty is daily nominal value, national minimum wage rate 125 as of now. So into the number of days till your until your failure subsists. So multiply by penalty. For example, if your asset declaration was filed on 10th May, so you were late by 10 days. So national minimum wage is 125. So 125 into 10 is 1,250. So this much amount will be imposed as a penalty for late declarants. Then, if your filing of the asset is done only in a June month or 1st June and thereafter, then you will be counted as non-declarations. And that non-declaration penalty is national minimum wage times 1 year 365 days. It comes to around 45,600 something. So this much penalty you have to pay if you fail to file your asset on time. Then, other than that, there are also certain provision for penalties like incomplete declarations. Knowingly or by mistake, if you make certain mistake, by not being mindful, if you make certain mistakes while filing the asset declaration, and if later on caught, then it will be charged under the incomplete declarations. And the penalty is 1 month national minimum wage position. And false declaration is a corruption offense. As per the rule 56 of the asset declaration rule, it says that it is a corruption offense under Section 64 of the Corruption Act of 2011. and it will be dealt as per the Act. So there are also some more penalty provisions, but these are the most relevant ones. That's why I have selected here. Plus, now to move on to the next two is on the gift declaration and management. So gift giving or accepting the gift is very prevalent, or is strongly ingrained into our social norms and customs, particularly, especially in Bhutan. But giving of the gift and accepting of the gift, if it is not regulated, then it might lead into so many corruption incidences, corruption offenses. So that's why the gift rule 2017, with an objective to prohibit soliciting, accepting, or receiving, giving gift, the gift rule 2017 was developed. And also the gift rule 2017 will specify what are the permissible gift, what are the impermissible gift, who are the prohibited sources, and what are the exceptions in giving and accepting of the gifts. So as per the rule, the definition of the gift is anything of the economic values. Anything of the economic values, when it is given, no consideration should be expected or given in return at any point of time. So that must be constituted as gift. So when you offer something of economic value to another person, you should not expect anything in any consideration should be expected. And if you are receiving anything of economic value, you should not feel obliged to return something to that particular person. So only if such intention is clear, then it is gift. Otherwise, beyond that intention, it is not gift, and it can be a bribe. So as I said, if the intention of giving a gift, you as a public official receiving a gift feels obliged to return something for receiving the gift. And if you as a giver, if you feel that if you expect something to be considered, then that is beyond the gift, and it will lead to so many corruption incidences through conflict of interest. It will develop conflict of interest. It will also become bribe under the Corruption Act of Bhutan. So therefore, if knowingly accepting the gift or soliciting or encourage the acceptance or solicitation directly or indirectly of any gift from a prohibited source is considered as a corruption offense, and it will be dealt as per the Act under which So now one thing you have, before I proceed further, you should be very clear now what is called gift. Gift gift. For example, if you are a parent and you go for school and your child's admission, and your child is below 5, policy that it is not admissible, right? But you take some gift, you carry some gift to the principal and expect some consideration from him to admit your child, though it is inadmissible. Then it is not a gift. It is not a gift. It is actually the bribe. So gifts shimigi khatuleya rich kaneki ni mila. Then lemigi khatuleya dachu nga chala ani the gift thopchi da kholu ai charochi bego semigi no santanirami. So anisumgi situation yobachin chamchi, then we can call it as a gift. Other than that, then it's not a gift. So giving prohibition and exceptions. This will tell the ruler. Gift where it is prohibited is the giving and accepting or solicitation and accepting of gift from the prohibited sources. either directly or indirectly is not allowed. So who are prohibited sources here? Means prohibited source is referred to the person who seek official actions or does business with your agency. If anybody does business with your agency, if anybody seeks your agency's services or action, then those person is referred as a uh, prohibited source. And we should never accept directly or indirectly. Indirectly means charagi accept mabedi berura if your spouse, if the gift is given to your spouse. So you also should not encourage or let your spouse or dependent to accept the gift. Then second one is between the public servants. So between two public servants is also prohibited. Receiving or giving of gift between two public servants is also prohibited in Sessionila. But there are some exceptions to it. For example, from the prohibited sources, imagine you can solicit or give or accept the gift based on the personal relationship. Personal relationship, you again, as I said earlier, if you feel not obliged to do something in return for receiving the gift, or if the giver do not expect anything from you, then once again, based on personal relationship, you can accept or solicit gift from the prohibited source. Then immediate relatives, your parents, brothers, sisters, father or mother-in-laws, then in common opportunities and benefits, like annual diary law, then calendars, this will be so you can give it to them. So between two public servants, now between two public servants, when you can give or solicit the gift is, you can give during the infrequent personal significances like marriage, transfer, resignation, then newborn or death, permissible the nominal value of 125 into not more than 10 days scale. So a worth of 1,250 ki worth gift during the personal significance, infrequent manner, frequently make is any occasions infrequent significances like marriage, the one ime, transfer, then resignation, newborn, death, and so
But like if all the occasion was the same month, then did it?
But it is a different occasion, remember? It falls in the same month, but different occasion. Marriage, or marriage, transfer, then personal hospitality that is subject to being it modest. So much sheng tor nalafa junbe to gyumbe mola shimiki chi ani chim nalafa. Then remember teaching nalu dinner re jobe wachin then chukuchi hospitality personal hospitality nalebe chunguchi pachose. But not again exceeding the nominal and value. Then other transactions, other gift transactions, a public servant or official may accept or solicit the gift on behalf of your agencies other than the prohibited sources. Charity agencies ki behalf na it has to be declared and deposited with the agency. Agency not deposit. But from the foreign sources, foreign agencies, as far as the rules concerned, it is not allowed. But any souvenirs, then a mementos is the land office officially office use now management and declaration part. So any gift that you have received must be declared or disclosed within the 24 hours after receiving the gift. And for that purpose, agency should have a gift register to record. So much gift register to the agency goes open bedi goes much develop the OIPD nale requirement so you should have a gift register open to enable your employees to declare the gift that they have received. And if the gift was received, or if the gift is received out of station, not in an office premise, na member, door na region, and the total imagine, upon arrival at your workstation. So you within 24 hours, you should declare the gifts. Now, for management purpose, nachiki roles and responsibilities say chidi the karalati to nashukup so head of agencies this you have a role to designate a gift disclosure administrator. So your agency should have a gift administrator. So whoever comes to declare the gift, you should record that administrator must record it in the gift register, and then the head of agency also should constitute a gift administration committee. So if the gift is received by the head of agency, then to decide on the gift that is received by the head, there should be a committee to go. Whereas if the gift is received by the employees, the head will determine whether this gift is permissible or returned, or whether it is impermissible. Then head of agency also must impose penalties and disciplinary actions of not declaring the gift. Then administrator roles and committee roles, I think it's not relevant here. Now gift disposal. Now if the gift is declared, and then the decision is taken against the gift. So how we can dispose the gift is, if the gift is within the permissible range, then it can be returned it to the public servant that is concerned. So for example, I received a gift when I was on a tour, and I declared to the administrator and the head of agency decide on the gift, whether the gift was received from the prohibited source or not, or whether the gift is within the range of permissible or not. And if it is found to be permissible gift, then it will be returned back to me. Then if the gift is impermissible gift, for instance, like if it is received from prohibited sources, if it is beyond the nominal and the value, then it must be returned to the giver within 5 working days. Look, giver the so gift as far as possible we should not accept gift. Prohibit the intention, the primary objective of the gift rule is to prohibit solicitation or accepting of the gift. Otherwise, the matena topsashile look opportunity at lahata impermissible gift you have to return it back. Then for any prohibited gifts from the foreign sources, you can use it as official purpose, office use kit in the plus penalty for breaches again. So if you have received a gift and if it's not declared, for the first instance, you will be fined twice the estimated fair market value of the gift. The gift you have received is a worth of 3,000, and you fail to declare the gift, means you will be fined 3,000 times 2, 6,000. Then if it is for the second time, then 5 times, multiply it by 5 times. And more than twice per virgin, then 10 times of the estimated fair market value. So that is the penalty for not disclosing the gift that you have received. Plus, am I going too fast? Hope I am not putting you into sleep. Okay, should we go to the next topic? conflict of interest in the next these are all tools, prevention tools. Actually, each presentation needs only a minimum of 30 minutes, but I have squeezed or condensed to a few slides. Maybe clarity may not be that much on the concepts. So next one is the conflict of interest. So conflict of interest, mere having conflict of interest is not a corruption offense in navigate but failure to declare a conflict of interest and taking part in the proceedings of official decision-making process, then that is a corruption offense. So in a small, neat society like ours, we cannot avoid conflict of interest in a working situation, working life. Completely, we cannot avoid that. It will arise at any point of time, but you must be aware of it and must disclose or declare the conflict of interest as and when it arises. So normally, what is conflict of interest is? Conflict of interest is a situation, it's a situation where when it that will arise when your personal or private interests compete with your organization's or the company's interest. So shoragi personal or private interest with the shoragi company or organization interest me as it compete with watching that time this conflict of interest situation will arise. And by the OECD, they define conflict of interest as a conflict between your personal or private interest with that of the public duty, your public responsibility. Private interest, the conflict that is known as conflict of interest. Now, what is private interest means? Private interest is an interest that will bring you benefit or disadvantage as a individual. Individual, if there is any benefit or disadvantage, because conflict of interest is not always referred when there is a benefit. Disadvantage, situation escape benefit and disadvantage. So that time we call it a conflict of interest. Or if a public official wishes someone to benefit or disadvantage, hanism situation hanism interest private interest. Private interest can be pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest, financial interest or non-financial interest. Financial interest means by taking the action or by taking part in the decision-making process, if there is financial loss or gain to you as an individual, that is, or to anybody whom you wish to have that benefit, that is a financial loss. Financial and private interest. Non-pecuniary or non-financial private interest means the conflict of interest that arise due to the affiliations and associations. The relationship developing conflict of interest, the non-pecuniary interests. So private interest can be of two types. So here it says that financial private interest is easy to detect. But non-financial interest, it is quite difficult to find. So normally there are three types of situations where conflict of interest might arise. First one is actual conflict of interest. Is when a public official is in a position to be influenced by his or her private interest when doing the job. For instance, this situation arises when there is a direct conflict of interest between your private interest and your public duty. So that is actual conflict of interest. For instance, you are a selection panelist member, and one of the participating candidate is your brother or sister. So there is an actual or direct conflict of interest. 아니라. So 아니즘 situation na bewachin actual conflict of interest. And another one is potential conflict of interest. Is a public official is in a position where they may be influenced in the future by the private interest when they're doing their jobs. So to the interest conflict of interest mindu, but in the future it might occur. So this situation will arise when, for example, for if you are a procurement officer, if you are a procurement officer and your spouse is having a business license. So anytime your spouse will participate in the bidding process, bidding another one in procurement. So that time the conflict of interest might arise. So that is a potential conflict of interest. And another one is perceived conflict of interest. Actually, there is no conflict of interest, but people perceive that your public official's position is appearing or perceived to be influencing the performance of your public role and responsibility. For instance, like you are the employee of PPC, and your spouse is taking part in the tendering process, but you are not a tender awarding committee. You are not a committee, Mullah. So people might think that you being an employee of the PPC is influencing the decisions of that tender committee. So anizum perceptions is so that is a perceived conflict of interest. So machigi and with three types we categorize by the usage. So as and when there is a conflict of interest situation arise while discharging your public duties, you have to disclose or to declare the conflict of interest in situation. And only asset declaration time we have a provision for declaring the conflict of interest. Basically for any additional job, the post-employment plans. But in your day-to-day any transactions, ad hoc declaration. If you are a member of a committee and if any agenda, if any of the agenda is having a conflict with your any private interest, then you have to disclose your conflict of interest declaration form, the fill up course. Plus now management, there are different or various ways of managing conflict of interest. There are different strategies to manage conflict of interest depending on the nature of conflict, the severity of the conflict, then also the situation of the case that TD management use. So here I'm going to explain on three options. First one is called waive off. So waive off is a management option to manage conflict of interest when the conflict of interest is not very severe. Severity low risk conflict of interest then you can after declaration or after formal disclosure of the conflict of interest, you can let that officer or official to take part in the further proceedings. So that is called waive off. And second one is called recuse or remove. If the conflict of interest nature is quite severe or high risk, then after disclosure, you can remove him or her from the further proceedings of the matter. So machito na committee chi memola. So if the agenda is having conflict with your interest after declaration, you can leave for any further proceedings of the discussions. And then the third option is called divest or transfer. So here the option C is that if the conflict of interest can to manage the conflict of interest, if the conflict of interest occurs again frequently, if an employee can relinquishes his private interest, meaning surrender his private interest, and then transfer the private interest to someone else. For instance, you are a procurement officer, your wife is having a any license to supply the office stationaries. So anytime you open any announce for the bid, your wife take part in that. So anism bewachin the interest in so in this case, either your wife have to surrender the business license or transfer the license to someone else. So anism options this looking actually diverse. So these are three management of conflict of interest options. So advantages and disadvantages, I think I don't have to read this. So machiki good governance, promote penny, then transparency, the accountability, trust, promote penny. So this through declaration of conflict of interest, it will help in this. And if it is not declared, then it will impair your judgment, decision-making process. Now, impair balance. Plus, last one thing, conflict of interest. Sorry, code of conduct. But when I briefly scanned your service rules and regulation 2016, I think it has captured every aspect of ethical requirements, standards, professional conduct. So I also feel it is needless to present on this because the code of conduct then I think yes, it might add some value. But for your agency company, I think your code of conduct is very comprehensive. There is minor code of conduct, major code of conduct. It has included conflict of interest declaration is required as per your code of conduct. Even any gift declarations, the solicitation of the gift is to avoid so normally, code of conduct is a set of rules around which the behavior of the employee within the organization is followed. So that is known as code of conduct. So if the code of conduct, a well-written code of conduct, and practicing it at your workplace will actually define your company's culture, core values, principles. This will define balance. And it also sets ethical standards and professional conducts that is expected from the employees at all times. And it will also let your customers and partners to know your organization's values and principles and encourages them to do business, builds trust and confidence to do business with your company. So there are so many benefits of having code of conduct. Having a code of conduct will clearly spells out the roles and responsibility of each employee in your organization's model. It will also build, promotes team spirit and innovations in your organizations to improve your performance. It also enhances the ethical decision-making skills. It also sets ethical standards and team spirit towards achieving the goals. So, code of conduct. So, leisure bezoshnale follow begopti khasiyesuni. Then, code of conduct then there will be a trust and confidence between the employees, between the management and the employees. So on through code of conduct we can achieve that. And for your agency, there is a well drafted, a well scripted code of conduct too. Only thing is, I think you must do sensitization to your employees and let them abide or follow this code of conduct. I think it's more than enough to message me. Plus, so finally, I concluded my presentation. And if there is any questions, you touch base. Private sectors like financial institutions, like Trashi Bank, this then private sectors as of now, the financial institution and the Trashi Bank but as and when required by the act, they have to file the asset declaration. But normally, annually, they can declare. volunteers say man like the case re you be watching tenen ngachi ani act the watching kung rule na le chuk ti sun chi kung bego se bechugo we must let them to declare or file the asset declaration last last lastly. But yes, our next step is bringing the private sectors on board. We have a program designed for that, and a business integrity initiative of Bhutan's program. So through this program, we are approaching to the private sector. As of now, we could not do that, and only as an individual, private individual, the case written, allegation written, then we let them to file the asset declaration. Then, other than that, financial institutions.
Asset declaration, the initial stage no certification was deleted. Any additional from yearly update to more. 아니 certification 다 거리좀 집에지. 다 해마 소수지에 맨출레스 누한테 해마기 변동 거와. yani 다로 삽디 주 배우도록 다 아니기 코스트 안 되게.
Plus, any faculty they take on the additional charm declare whether you have asset or acquired additional asset or not, filing this every year. Additional assets acquired maybe better income to the expenditure to the tube. Skip better, skip option TV, skip baby, income to the expenditure tube. So in case if there is change in the assets, remove the payment, it will be in the history. But you will file during your filing time the hemagi gari ki number mula. So this and this car number has been sold signature to be aniki income so that income has to be filed under the income statement with him filed then some you can add as an additional asset. So tangachiki yagi source the malitin deumala. So yeah, additional new car to purchase maybe source the so the chisarki hemagi also with matriva so anigi the yakin deumala. With the balance should
remember the asset loan the
so I need year wise page then nachiki shule history so year kadimchina ludicho gari kadi mona so kadimchina le change history so anyway history at once kara remember year wise page in addition
Obecnie właśnie kadacjanci to było dziwki trzymające. So within
practice the but rule in true sense anywhere gift prohibit then gift received the chimna beru office beru declaration true sense but to practice office gift in Balabia only but chimna beru then gift so legal
just a clarification. Sorry, clarify the question. Mopahima chigi ka hema previously majini kadar session gi done just on the different jamshi member even present day machi finigi luksudu but in the meantime anti-corruption machine na ina chingla da year de material tanga anale da kadar session na de ansunigi the presentation and the present day fasha da machi different just kadar jamchi pigo sivigi circular tribunal. But with the coming of Gift 2017, so I know that the necessary representation that nominal value. So I'm that we never as per rule emerging, the official between the public servant, the prohibit socially that the lender much better. But between the public servant, all unprohibited meaning the Shimeon in the world, Ansun in the embassy, and nominal value the lender. optional. So I would the channel lenchu optional lenchu similar rule. You will get as per any very lenchu is there on it, there's no problem. But the should go personality imagine you will value means. Darangi family yung imagine ro optional ring ro kadebe lender him in but you would look and personal imagine ro kadebe personally ani chiru demand the over. So answer just something.
I'm not what it is. So you get law. The private in this civil service in this public servant 하루로 나한테 가장 정직에 미쳐오거나 없으면 되는데 그래서 이제 매기 인블록하는 데 미쳤어요. 그리고 the armed forces the long talk to show medical scene. 아니 it's also not a popular.
Tato selection of the China issue to Sundarica. Be it armed force or public serving guarding the game. That in the new armed force area and the experience act the public serving recipe. So the level to that to practice in the say the armed force not by invasion will live and representative and limit. So anywhere that any country to work. Because any Hamagi circular down the local much mina city open. But the natural civil servants invasion any never still that even if an image give ruling motion one day that the officer tower George and Katatasu was the coffee meal. So any very but the give ruling most mommy one that only period my armed force and George. Only two shoes and the Jimmy say, so I go to that doing that on the invasion. The rule de corner go, Machilla go, George Peggy, you ever name
and monitor the level.
The monitoring, the management, the issue is it's not centralized to ACC member. ACC came up in some way, yes, we have to monitoring, but we have any decentralized agencies, that's any no roles and responsibility to be done. So head of is responsible to manage the gifts that are received by any employees or staff in his or her agencies. And the rangi agencies give a top of. So this implementation of the rule, gift rule 2017 there, the agencies can decentralized. So the ACC calculated the shule allegations more. The allegations we were watching then another thing then we have to see the gift declaration should give to the declaration we will check that. Then in Chile the rule that Chile we watching the RAA Royal Audit Authority during compliance audit chapter that also and gift declaration the management as per rules so anyway to give issue. Incomplete GPU data. Promotion is the gift be at home or office within that nominal value a chope logical the chope is a nice stop that was in the presented. After that, after receiving the gift, declaration and management. Cautiously and declare the then you have to manage that. Another permissible impermissible then beyond that nominal value, Regamiga, Regimetational managed whether watching, issue around allegation too much, then Ali on support Chombola. Give the link to the I have declared. Managed whether is Rangi security can do.